During a birthday dinner at a luxury restaurant, the millionaire's mother froze when she saw the waitress's pendant, the same one she gave her daughter before she disappeared 24 years ago. The golden glow of the Golden Pearl restaurant cast warm shadows across crystal glasses and polished silverware as Los Angeles's elite gathered for what would become the most fateful evening in the Kingsley family's storied history. September 15th had always been just another date on the calendar, but tonight it marked Margaret Kingsley's 52nd birthday, a milestone she'd never imagined celebrating without her complete family. Margaret stood near the entrance, her platinum hair swept into an elegant chignon, greeting guests with the practiced grace of someone who'd spent decades commanding boardrooms and charity galas. The Kingsley Hotel Empire's matriarch wore a navy Chanel dress that complemented her steel blue eyes, the same eyes that had spent 24 years searching crowds for a face she'd never stopped hoping to see again. "Mom, you look stunning tonight," Andrew Kingsley said, approaching with 2 champagne flutes. At 28, he possessed the kind of refined handsomeness that graced magazine covers. Dark hair, perfectly styled, emerald eyes that seemed to carry the weight of unspoken sorrows, and a smile that never quite reached those eyes. His Armani tuxedo fit him like a second skin, but beneath the polished exterior lay a man who'd spent his entire life feeling incomplete, without understanding why. "Thank you, darling." Margaret accepted the champagne, her fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. "Your father would have been so proud to see the man you've become." Andrew's jaw tightened slightly. The father he'd lost to a heart attack when he was 12 had become a convenient story, much easier than explaining how a 4-year-old boy had watched his twin sister disappear into the night, leaving him with nightmares that still haunted his sleep. Across the restaurant's main dining room, Harper Sullivan balanced a heavy tray of wine glasses while navigating between tables, crowded with people whose monthly shoe budgets exceeded her yearly rent. At 28, she'd learned to move through these spaces like a ghost, invisible to the wealthy patrons who barely acknowledged her existence, yet sharp enough to anticipate their every need. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, revealing the delicate silver pendant that rested just below her collarbone. The heart-shaped locket, broken cleanly down the middle, caught the light as she moved, its intricate engravings telling a story she'd never been able to decipher. It was the only connection to a past that Norah Whitfield, the woman who'd raised her, claimed to know nothing about. "Harper, table 12 needs their wine selection," called Marcus, the head waiter, his tone carrying the usual edge of impatience that came with serving LA's most demanding clientele. "On it," Harper replied, checking her reflection quickly in a mirrored pillar. 6 years of working double shifts had taught her to hide exhaustion behind a professional smile. Tonight was particularly important. The Golden Pearl's owner had promised substantial bonuses for flawless service at the Kingsley celebration, money that could finally cover Chloe's school registration fees. As Harper approached the main table with the evening's featured wine selection, she mentally rehearsed the description she'd memorized. This evening we're featuring a 2018 Chateau Margaux, with notes of blackcurrant and subtle hints of cedar. The words died in her throat as she noticed the older woman at the head of the table staring at her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Margaret Kingsley's champagne glass slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor in a cascade of crystal and golden liquid. The pendant. Dear God, the pendant hanging around this young woman's neck was unmistakable. The Kingsley family heirloom that had been passed down through 5 generations. The very same locket she'd clasped around her daughter's neck just moments before their world collapsed. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Harper knelt immediately, gathering crystal shards while other staff rushed over with towels. "I'm so sorry. Let me get this cleaned up right away." Margaret couldn't speak. She stared at the young woman's face, those emerald eyes that mirrored Andrew's exactly, the delicate bone structure that was pure Kingsley, the way she moved with unconscious grace despite her obvious exhaustion. 24 years of searching, of private investigators and false leads and broken hopes. And here she was, serving wine at her birthday dinner. "Mom." Andrew was beside Margaret instantly, his hand on her shoulder. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." The irony of his words wasn't lost on Margaret. She had seen a ghost, the ghost of her daughter, alive and breathing and carefully cleaning up spilled champagne while wearing the family's most precious heirloom, like it was nothing more than a pretty piece of jewelry. "I'm fine," Margaret managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Just the excitement of the evening. Too much champagne on an empty stomach? Harper finished collecting the larger pieces of crystal, acutely aware of the strange tension that had settled over the table. The older woman, she recognized her from newspaper photos as Margaret Kingsley, one of the city's most powerful businesswomen, kept staring at her with an expression Harper couldn't quite read. It wasn't the usual dismissive look she got from wealthy patrons, but something deeper, almost desperate. "Please, don't worry about the glass," Andrew said, and Harper looked up to find him watching her with genuine concern. "Are you hurt? You're not cut. Are you?" Something about his voice made her pause. There was warmth there, a kindness that seemed rare among the restaurant's usual clientele. Their eyes met for a moment, and Harper felt an odd flutter of recognition, as if she'd known him forever. "I'm fine. Thank you for asking," she said, standing carefully. "Really, I should be the one apologizing. Let me get you another champagne and—" "Harper," Margaret's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a blade. "Your name is Harper." "Yes, ma'am. Harper Sullivan." She glanced nervously between mother and son, wondering if she'd somehow offended them. "I can get my manager if there's a problem with—" "No problem at all," Margaret said quickly, her mind racing. Sullivan, the name meant nothing. But that didn't matter. Names could be changed, identities could be altered. But that pendant, that's a beautiful necklace you're wearing. It looks like an antique. Harper's hand moved instinctively to the locket. "Thank you. It belonged to It was a gift from the woman who raised me. She said it was the only thing I had when—" She trailed off, unwilling to share her personal history with strangers. "When what?" Andrew asked gently, genuinely curious about this young woman, who seemed to radiate strength despite her obvious struggles. "When she found me," Harper finished quietly. "I was adopted as a child. Norah, my adoptive mother. She never told me much about where I came from." The words hit Margaret like physical blows. Found as a child, no memory of her origins, the right age, the right look, and wearing Emily's pendant. It couldn't be coincidence. The universe wasn't that cruel, was it? Across the restaurant, Charles Davenport watched the interaction with growing unease. At 55, he'd spent decades perfecting the role of Margaret's trusted advisor and Andrew's protective uncle figure. His silver hair and expensive suits gave him an air of distinguished respectability, but his sharp eyes missed nothing, especially not the way Margaret was staring at the young waitress like she'd seen a miracle. Charles had buried the past carefully. Methodically, the official story was simple. Both children had died in the kidnapping. The kidnappers were never found. Case closed. For 24 years, he'd been the shoulder Margaret cried on, the steady presence who helped rebuild the Kingsley empire while positioning himself as the obvious successor when the time came. But the way Margaret was looking at that girl, the way her hands were shaking as she fumbled with her purse, Charles felt the first cold fingers of fear creeping up his spine. "I should let you enjoy your dinner," Harper said, sensing the undercurrents she couldn't understand. "Please, let me know if you need anything else." As she walked away, Andrew found himself watching her retreating figure with unexpected interest. There was something about Harper Sullivan that intrigued him beyond her obvious beauty, a resilience that spoke to the part of him that had always felt alone in crowded rooms. Margaret sat in stunned silence, her mind reeling with possibilities and prayers she'd been afraid to voice for over 2 decades. The pendant was real. The resemblance was undeniable. But how could she be sure without destroying the fragile hope that had just bloomed in her chest like a flower after an endless winter? The birthday celebration continued around them, but nothing would ever be the same again. 24 years earlier, Malibu, California. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Kingsley mansion, casting dancing shadows across the marble foyer where 4-year-old twins Emily and Andrew played with their wooden blocks. Emily wore a pink sundress with tiny white flowers, her auburn curls catching the light as she carefully stacked towers that Andrew would gleefully knock down. Look," Andrew called out, his emerald eyes sparkling with mischief as he built an elaborate castle. "This one's gonna be bigger than yours," Emily giggled, her own green eyes, identical mirrors of her brother's, lighting up with competitive spirit. "No way, Andy. Mine's gonna touch the ceiling," Margaret Kingsley. Then 28, and radiant with the kind of happiness that comes from believing your world is unshakable. Watched from the living room doorway. She was on the phone with her assistant, discussing details for a charity gala, but her attention kept drifting to her children. James, her husband, had left early for a business trip to New York, promising to return by evening with surprises for the twins. Mrs. Kingsley, Norah Whitfield appeared at Margaret's elbow, her voice tight with worry. Could I speak with you privately? Norah had worked for the Kingsley family for 3 years, a quiet woman in her mid-30s who'd proven herself invaluable with the children. But today, something was different about her demeanor, a nervous energy that made Margaret pause her phone conversation. Of course, Norah. Let me just finish this call. Margaret covered the phone's mouthpiece. Emily, Andrew. Stay in the foyer where I can see you. Okay, Mommy, they chorused, already absorbed in their building competition. Margaret stepped into the adjacent study with Norah, leaving the door slightly ajar to keep an eye on the twins. What's wrong? You look pale. Norah's hands trembled as she wrung them together. Mrs. Kingsley, I need to tell you something. About my son Michael, he's been diagnosed with leukemia. Oh, Norah. Margaret's heart immediately went out to her employee. I'm so sorry. What can we do to help? The best doctors, whatever you need. That's just it, Norah interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. The treatment costs. I've been taking small amounts from the household account, just a few hundred here and there. I plan to pay it back, I swear. But, Margaret frowned, more confused than angry. Norah, why didn't you just ask? We would have helped you without hesitation. I know now, but I was scared and desperate and Nora's words tumbled out in a rush. Mr. Davenport found out. Charles found the discrepancies in the books. A chill ran down Margaret's spine. Charles Davenport had been James's business partner and closest friend since college. He was practically family, someone they trusted implicitly with both business and personal matters. What did Charles say? Margaret asked carefully. He said he could make the whole thing disappear, that you'd never have to know, but Nora's voice broke. He wants something in return, something I can't give him. Before Margaret could respond, a crash echoed from the foyer, followed by Emily's delighted laughter. Andy, you're so silly. Margaret glanced toward the door, then back at Norah. What does he want? Norah couldn't meet her eyes. He wants me to leave certain doors unlocked tonight, to dismiss the security guards early. He said some business associates need access to James's study, that it's for a surprise audit or something. But Margaret, she finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. I don't think it's about business. The blood drained from Margaret's face. What are you saying? I think he's planning something terrible, and he has me trapped because of what I did. Because of Michael's medical bills. If I don't help him, he'll have me arrested. And then, who will take care of my son? Margaret's mind raced. Charles had been pressuring James to make him a full partner in the hotel business, but James had been resistant, wanting to keep the company family-owned for the children's sake. The twins were the only heirs to the Kingsley fortune, the only obstacles between Charles and complete control. We have to call the police, Margaret said, moving toward the phone. No! Norah grabbed her arm. He'll know it came from me. He said if I betrayed him, he'd make sure Michael never gets treatment. Please, Mrs. Kingsley, there has to be another way. From the foyer came the sound of blocks scattering across marble and the twins' continued laughter. Margaret's heart clenched as she watched Andrew chase Emily around their makeshift castle, both of them blissfully unaware that their world was about to shatter. We'll figure this out, Margaret said firmly. But first, I need to get the children somewhere safe. She hurried back to the foyer, where Emily was now sitting cross-legged, carefully arranging blocks by color, while Andrew sprawled on his stomach, building what looked like a bridge. Emily, sweetheart, come here. Margaret knelt beside her daughter, pulling the small heart-shaped locket from her own neck. It was a Kingsley family heirloom, passed down through 5 generations of women. I want you to wear this today. Really? Emily's eyes widened as Margaret fastened the delicate silver chain around her neck. It's so pretty, Mommy. It's very special, Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion she hoped the children wouldn't notice. Promise me you'll never take it off, okay? No matter what happens. I promise. Emily touched the pendant reverently, then threw her arms around Margaret's neck. "I love you." "Mommy, I love you too, baby girl. So very much." Margaret hugged both children tightly, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against hers, the sweet scent of their hair, the sound of their breathing. She had no way of knowing it would be the last time she'd hold her daughter for 24 years. The rest of the day passed in a haze of desperate planning. Margaret tried calling James, but his meetings were running long. She considered taking the children and leaving. But where could they go? That Charles couldn't find them. He knew all their friends, all their safe houses. As evening approached, Norah became increasingly agitated. "Mrs. Kingsley, I can't do this. I can't be responsible for whatever happens to your babies. Then we'll face whatever consequences come," Margaret said, steel in her voice. "I won't sacrifice my children to save us." But at 9:47 p.m., as Margaret was reading bedtime stories to the twins in the nursery, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in moments later, casting eerie shadows throughout the mansion as unfamiliar voices echoed from downstairs. "Mommy," Emily whispered, pressing close to Margaret's side. "What's happening?" "It's okay, baby. Just stay quiet." Margaret's hand shook as she reached for her phone, but the line was dead. The security system had been disabled, exactly as Charles had planned. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Margaret pushed both children toward the walk-in closet. "Hide behind the clothes. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "But Mommy," Andrew started. "Go now." The nursery door burst open just as the twins disappeared into the closet. 3 men in dark clothing and ski masks filled the doorway, their intentions clear despite their concealed faces. "Where are the kids?" one demanded. Margaret stood her ground, placing herself between the intruders and the closet. "They're not here. I sent them to their grandmother's." "Don't lie to us, lady. We know they're here." What followed was a nightmare of violence and terror. Margaret fought with the desperation of a mother protecting her young, but she was no match for 3 armed men. As they dragged her from the room, she heard the closet door open and Andrew's terrified voice, "Emily, run!" In the chaos that followed, Andrew somehow slipped away, a 4-year-old boy's natural instinct to hide serving him well in the maze of corridors he'd known since birth. But Emily, trusting and curious, had followed the voices calling for her brother. The last thing Margaret remembered before losing consciousness was the sound of a car engine starting in the driveway, and Emily's voice calling for her mommy, growing fainter and fainter until it disappeared entirely into the night. When she woke up hours later, bound and alone in the mansion's wine cellar, Andrew was crouched beside her, tears streaming down his face, clutching a torn piece of pink fabric that smelled like his sister's favorite soap. "Mommy," he whispered. "I couldn't find Mum. She's gone." And in that moment, Margaret Kingsley learned that there are some kinds of pain that never heal, only deepen with time, carved deeper by every birthday that passes, every Christmas morning with an empty chair, every night spent wondering if your child is alive or dead, or suffering somewhere beyond your reach. Charles Davenport arrived with the police 20 minutes later, playing the role of concerned family friend to perfection. His shock and grief so convincing that even Margaret almost believed it was real. Almost. Present day. Los Angeles. Margaret Kingsley hadn't slept since the birthday dinner 3 days ago. She sat in her home office at 3 a.m., surrounded by manila folders and photographs from 24 years of fruitless searching. Her fingers traced the edge of a faded missing persons poster featuring Emily's 4-year-old face. Those unmistakable emerald eyes that had stared back at her from across a restaurant table. Now belonging to a grown woman named Harper Sullivan, the private investigator she'd hired. David Chen had been discreet but thorough. His preliminary report lay open before her, sparse but promising. Harper Sullivan, age 28, raised by Norah Whitfield in the suburbs of Riverside. No birth certificate on file until age 5, no adoption records, no medical history before kindergarten. Margaret's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. "David, I know it's early, but I need you to dig deeper into Norah Whitfield. I need to know everything. Where she worked, who she knew, why she suddenly had a child in 1999. Mrs. Kingsley, I understand your urgency, but we need to be careful here. If this young woman really is your daughter, approaching this wrong could drive her away permanently. Just find me the truth." Margaret whispered. "I've waited 24 years. I can't wait much longer." Across town, Charles Davenport paced his Beverly Hills office like a caged animal. The morning newspapers were spread across his mahogany desk, but he couldn't focus on the business section. His mind kept returning to that moment at the restaurant when Margaret's champagne glass had shattered, when he'd seen recognition dawn in her eyes as she stared at the Sullivan girl, the girl who should have been dead, who was supposed to have died with her brother in that warehouse 24 years ago. Charles had paid good money to ensure there would be no loose ends, no survivors to point fingers or ask uncomfortable questions. The kidnappers had assured him both children would simply disappear, that Margaret would grieve and move on, eventually turning to her trusted advisor for comfort and guidance. Instead, one child had escaped, and now it seemed the other had somehow survived as well. He pulled out his encrypted phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "It's me. We have a problem. That job from '99, one of the packages has resurfaced." The voice on the other end was gravelly, cautious. "That's impossible. We delivered both packages as requested." "Well, one of them is working as a waitress in Beverly Hills and wearing family jewelry that should have been buried with her. Fix this. After all this time, that's going to cost extra. A lot extra. Just do it quietly. Make it look like an accident." Charles ended the call and walked to his office window, gazing out at the city where he'd built his reputation on the foundation of a murdered family's trust. He'd come too far to let a ghost from the past destroy everything he'd worked for. Meanwhile, at the Golden Pearl, Harper was struggling through another lunch shift. Her mind elsewhere, she kept thinking about the strange encounter with the Kingsley family, particularly the way the older woman had stared at her pendant with such intensity. And then there was Andrew. She couldn't shake the memory of his genuinely kind eyes, so different from the entitled indifference she usually encountered from wealthy patrons. "Table 7 is asking for you specifically," Marcus informed her, and Harper's pulse quickened when she saw Andrew sitting alone at a corner table, looking oddly nervous. "Good afternoon, Mr. Kingsley," she said professionally, though her cheeks warmed under his steady gaze. "What can I get you today? Actually, I was hoping we could talk. I know this is your workplace, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable. But," he gestured to the chair across from him, "would you join me for a few minutes? I promise I won't keep you long." Harper glanced around the restaurant. The lunch crowd was thinning, and Marcus was busy with inventory, against her better judgment. She sat down. "Is everything all right? Your mother seemed upset the other night." "That's what I wanted to ask you about." Andrew leaned forward slightly. "The pendant you wear. Where did you get it?" Harper's hand moved instinctively to the locket. "Why do you want to know? It's going to sound crazy, but it looks exactly like something my family lost a long time ago. My mother has been searching for it for years. Searching for a necklace." Harper's skepticism was evident. "Your family owns half the luxury hotels in America. Surely you can afford to replace a piece of jewelry." Andrew's laugh was hollow. "It's not about the money. It's about what it represents." He paused, seeming to wrestle with how much to reveal. "My family went through a tragedy when I was very young. My twin sister was kidnapped. She was wearing that pendant when she disappeared." Harper felt the blood drain from her face. "Your sister, Emily. Her name was Emily." Andrew's voice grew soft with old pain. "She was 4 years old. We never found her." The restaurant seemed to spin around Harper. She gripped the edge of the table, struggling to process what Andrew was telling her. A twin sister, kidnapped at 4, the same age Norah claimed Harper had been when she'd found her. "I'm sorry," Harper managed. "That must have been terrible for your family. It destroyed us." Andrew studied her face intently. "Harper, I need to ask you something, and please don't think I'm crazy, but is there any chance, any possibility that you might have been adopted?" Harper's heart hammered against her ribs. Yes, I was. But that doesn't mean... What do you remember from before you were 5? "Nothing. Norah always said I had some kind of trauma that caused memory loss. She found me when I was little and took me in." The words felt strange in her mouth, like a story she'd repeated so many times it had lost all meaning. Andrew reached across the table, his fingers almost touching hers. "Harper, I think we need to talk to my mother." "No." Harper pulled her hands away, panic rising in her chest. "No, this is insane. You're talking about some kind of fairy tale reunion. But life doesn't work that way. Your sister is probably dead, And I'm just some waitress who happens to wear a similar necklace. What if you're wrong? Andrew's eyes held a desperate hope that made Harper's chest tighten. What if she's been alive all this time, living just a few miles away? And we never knew. Before Harper could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Riverside General Hospital. Mrs. Sullivan, please come immediately. Norah Whitfield has been asking for you. Her condition has deteriorated. Harper stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I have to go, Norah. The woman who raised me. She's in the hospital. I'll drive you. Andrew offered immediately. No, I barely know you. This is family business. Harper, please. Andrew stood as well, his voice urgent. If there's even a chance that you're my sister, then Norah might have answers we both need. Harper stared at him, torn between the logical part of her mind that insisted this was all coincidence, and the deeper instinct that whispered this man's face was somehow familiar, like a half-remembered dream. Fine, she said finally. But if this turns out to be some elaborate con game, it's not. Andrew's relief was palpable. I promise you it's not. As they left the restaurant together, neither noticed the black sedan that had been parked across the street for the past hour, or the man inside who raised a camera to capture their departure. Charles Davenport would have his proof that the Sullivan girl was getting too close to the truth, and he would make sure that proof never reached Margaret Kingsley. In Riverside, Norah Whitfield lay in her hospital bed, her breathing labored but her mind sharp with the weight of secrets she'd carried for nearly a quarter-century. She'd been expecting this day, dreading it, but knowing it would eventually come. The pendant had been her mistake. She should have thrown it away, hidden it, anything but. Let the child wear it as she grew up. But Emily had loved it so much, and Norah hadn't had the heart to take away the one connection to her past. Now, as her body finally gave way to the cancer that had been eating at her for months, Norah knew the time for truth had arrived. The child she'd saved, the daughter she'd raised, deserved to know where she came from, even if that knowledge would destroy the only family Harper had ever known. The drive to Riverside General Hospital stretched 45 minutes through Los Angeles traffic. 45 minutes of charged silence punctuated by Harper's nervous directions and Andrew's stolen glances. His Mercedes moved smoothly through the congested streets, but the tension inside the car was thick enough to cut. Take the next exit, Harper said softly, her fingers worrying the pendant at her throat. She'd been doing that unconsciously since they left the restaurant, and each time Andrew noticed, his heart clenched with possibility and dread. Harper, he began carefully, about what I said back there. I don't want you to feel pressured if this is too much, too fast. It's insane, she interrupted, but her voice lacked conviction. 24 years, and suddenly I'm supposed to believe I'm some missing heiress, that the woman who raised me has been lying my entire life. Andrew pulled into the hospital parking lot, finding a space near the main entrance. He turned off the engine but made no move to get out. What do you remember about being little, before you have clear memories? Harper closed her eyes, searching the shadows of her earliest recollections. Fragments, nightmares about dark places and loud voices. Norah always said I was traumatized when she found me, that it was normal for children to block out painful memories. Emily used to have nightmares too, Andrew said quietly. Even before everything happened, she'd wake up crying about monsters in the dark, and I'd sneak into her bed to keep her safe. Something twisted in Harper's chest at his words. Not quite memory, but an echo of something familiar. A sense of safety that came with another presence nearby. A warmth that chased away the shadows. We should go in, she said abruptly, needing to escape the intensity of his gaze and the impossible hope she could see building there. Riverside General was a far cry from the gleaming medical centers that served Beverly Hills. The floors were clean but worn, the walls painted in that institutional beige that seemed designed to drain color from the world. Harper led Andrew through corridors she'd walked many times over the past month, since Norah's diagnosis had taken a turn for the worse. Room 314, Harper said, pausing outside a door marked with Norah's name. Andrew, I need you to understand something. Whatever's happening here, whatever you think you've figured out, Norah is the only mother I've ever known. She saved me, raised me, loved me when no one else would. I won't let anyone hurt her. I'm not here to hurt anyone, Andrew said gently. I just want answers." Harper pushed open the door to reveal a small private room where Norah Whitfield lay propped against pillows, her once vibrant red hair now gray and thin from chemotherapy. At 62, she looked fragile as spun glass, but her blue eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had guided Harper through countless childhood crises. "Harper, sweetheart." Norah's voice was weak, but warm. "I was hoping you'd come." "Of course I came." Harper hurried to her bedside, taking Norah's thin hand in both of hers. "How are you feeling? Did the doctors say anything about—" She stopped, noticing Norah's gaze had shifted to Andrew, who stood quietly near the door. "And who is this handsome young man?" Norah asked, but something flickered in her expression. Not curiosity, but recognition tinged with fear. "This is Andrew Kingsley," Harper said, watching Norah's face carefully. He believes I might be related to his family somehow." The silence that followed was deafening. Norah's hand tightened around Harper's, and her breathing became shallow and rapid. "Kingsley," she whispered, and the name seemed to cause her physical pain. "Norah." Harper leaned closer, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "You need to leave," Norah said suddenly, her eyes fixed on Andrew. "Both of you." "It's not safe." Andrew stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitfield, I know this must be overwhelming, but I think Harper might be my twin sister. She was kidnapped when we were 4 years old and—" "Stop." Norah struggled to sit up straighter, her voice gaining strength despite her physical weakness. "You don't understand what you're asking. Some secrets are buried for good reason." "Please," Andrew said, his voice breaking. "My family has been destroyed by not knowing. My mother has spent 24 years looking for Emily. If Harper is Emily, then she's in more danger now than she's ever been." Norah snapped, then immediately looked stricken. "I shouldn't have said that." Harper felt the world tilt around her. "Norah, what are you talking about? What danger?" Norah closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. "I've kept you safe for so long, baby girl. Kept you hidden, kept you away from all of it. But I'm dying, and I can't protect you anymore." "Protect me from what?" Harper's voice rose. "Norah, you're scaring me." "The man who took you," Norah whispered. "He's still out there, still powerful, still dangerous. And if he finds out you're alive—" Andrew moved closer to the bed, his face pale. Who took her?" Norah looked between them, seeming to weigh her words carefully. "Someone close to your family. Someone who had everything to gain from making sure neither of you survived to inherit." "That's impossible," Andrew said. "The investigation showed it was random criminals, a kidnapping gone wrong. The investigation was a lie." Norah's voice was bitter. "Bought and paid for by the same man who orchestrated everything." Harper's mind reeled. "Are you saying someone in Andrew's family tried to kill us?" "Not family," Norah said, "but close enough. Someone who stood to inherit everything if the children disappeared." Understanding dawned on Andrew's face like a cold sunrise. "Charles?" he breathed. "You're talking about Charles Davenport." Norah nodded, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. "He found out I was taking money for Michael's treatments. Small amounts, but enough to threaten me with prison. He said all I had to do was leave certain doors unlocked. Dismiss the security guards early. He told me it was for a business meeting, but I knew. Somehow, I knew it was wrong." "So you helped them," Harper said, her voice hollow. "And then I followed them." Norah's grip on Harper's hand was desperate now. "I watched them take you both to that warehouse, and I knew Charles had lied. They weren't planning to hold you for ransom. They were going to kill you." The room fell silent except for the steady beep of Norah's heart monitor and the whisper of oxygen through her nasal cannula. "I managed to save you," Norah continued, looking at Harper. "But I couldn't get to Andrew too. By the time I came back with help, you were both gone, I thought. I was afraid Andrew was dead, and I'd only been able to save one child. But I escaped," Andrew said numbly. "I got out on my own and made it back to the house." "Thank God," Norah whispered. "I've wondered all these years. Prayed that somehow you'd survive too." Harper pulled her hands free, standing abruptly. "This is insane. You're telling me that you've known all along who I really am? That you've let a family grieve for their dead daughter while you raised her as your own? I was protecting you." Norah's voice cracked. "Charles believes you're dead, As long as he thinks that, you're safe. But if he finds out you survived, if he realizes you could expose him, he'll try to finish what he started." Andrew finished grimly. Harper looked between them, feeling like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole. "So, what am I supposed to do? Hide forever? Pretend I'm dead while my real family thinks I'm gone?" "Your real family is right here," Norah said firmly. "I may not have given birth to you, but I raised you, loved you, kept you safe. That makes me your mother in every way that matters." "And Margaret?" Harper asked, her voice breaking. "What about the woman who spent 24 years searching for me?" Before anyone could answer, a commotion erupted in the hallway, voices raised in urgent conversation, footsteps running. Harper moved to the window and peered through the blinds to see several men in dark suits questioning nurses at the station. "Andrew," she said quietly, fear creeping into her voice. "Those men, they're asking about this room." Andrew joined her at the window, his face hardening. "Security? They don't look like hospital security." Norah struggled to sit up, panic evident in her eyes. "You have to go, now. Use the service elevator, get out through the loading dock." "We're not leaving you," Harper protested. "You have to." Norah reached into her bedside drawer with shaking hands, pulling out a small digital recorder. "Take this. It's everything. The whole truth about what Charles did, what he's still capable of, if something happens to me. Make sure Margaret hears it." Andrew took the recorder, slipping it into his jacket pocket. "Mrs. Whitfield, come with us. We can protect you. I'm dying anyway, child. But you too. You have a chance at the life you were meant to have." Norah looked at Harper with infinite love and regret. "I'm sorry I kept the truth from you for so long. I hope someday you can forgive me." Harper kissed Norah's forehead, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Mom. No matter what happens, you'll always be my mom." The footsteps in the hallway were getting closer. Andrew took Harper's hand, and she was startled by how natural it felt. "How right. We have to go," he said urgently, as they slipped out through the service corridor. Harper couldn't know that the next time she saw Norah Whitfield, it would be to say goodbye forever. They escaped through the hospital's loading dock just as Charles Davenport's men reached Norah's room. Andrew's Mercedes sped through Riverside's industrial district, while Harper clutched the digital recorder like a lifeline, her world spinning on an axis she'd never known existed. "Where are we going?" Harper asked, watching the hospital disappear in the side mirror. "Somewhere safe to listen to this," Andrew replied, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Somewhere Charles can't find us." 20 minutes later, they sat in Andrew's downtown loft, a minimalist space of exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Harper perched nervously on the edge of his leather sofa, while Andrew poured himself a scotch with shaking hands. "Want something to drink?" he offered. "I don't drink." Harper turned the recorder over in her hands. Norah always said alcohol made people make bad decisions. Now I'm wondering what other wisdom she gave me was really about protecting me from my past. Andrew sat beside her, careful to maintain distance despite the magnetic pull he'd been fighting since the moment they met. "Are you ready for this?" Harper pressed play. Norah's voice filled the room, stronger than it had been in the hospital, recorded perhaps weeks earlier when she'd still had hope for recovery. "My name is Norah Elizabeth Whitfield, and I need to confess what I've done. In September 1999, I helped orchestrate the kidnapping of Emily and Andrew Kingsley. Not willingly, but I helped nonetheless." Harper's breath caught. Hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way the hospital conversation hadn't. Charles Davenport discovered I'd been taking money from the household accounts to pay for my son Michael's leukemia treatment. Instead of reporting me or offering help, he used my desperation against me. He told me business associates needed access to James Kingsley's study, that I just needed to disable the security system and dismiss the guards early. He said it was routine. Something about auditing files. Andrew's jaw clenched. Bastard. He used her child's illness to manipulate her. I knew something was wrong when I saw the van in the driveway that night. These weren't businessmen. They were criminals. But by then it was too late to stop what I'd started. I followed them when they took the children, thinking maybe I could help somehow, make up for what I'd done. The recording crackled with emotion as Norah's voice broke. They took Emily and Andrew to an abandoned warehouse in San Pedro. I heard Charles on the phone with someone. telling them to make sure there are no survivors to complicate the inheritance. That's when I realized he'd never planned for the children to be returned alive. Harper pressed her hand to her mouth, bile rising in her throat. He was going to murder us. I managed to create a distraction, broke some windows, triggered a car alarm, anything to cause chaos. In the confusion, Andrew escaped on his own. He was always clever like that, even at 4. But Emily was cornered, terrified. I grabbed her and ran. Andrew leaned forward, hanging on every word. This was the missing piece of his childhood trauma, the gap his 4-year-old mind had never been able to fill. I should have taken her back to Margaret immediately. I know that now. But Charles thought both children were dead, and I was terrified of what he'd do if he discovered Emily had survived. I'd already seen him orchestrate a double murder. What would stop him from trying again? The recording paused, filled with the sound of Norah crying. So I ran. I took Emily far from Los Angeles, changed our names, created new identities. I told everyone she was my niece, that her parents had died in a car accident. She was so traumatized she didn't speak for months, and when she finally did, she had no memory of her life before that night. Harper touched her pendant, remembering fragmented nightmares that suddenly seemed less like imagination and more like suppressed memories. I raised her as Harper Sullivan, my daughter in every way except blood. I loved her fiercely, completely, but I know that doesn't excuse what I stole from her real family. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone. I thought about Margaret Kingsley somewhere in Los Angeles, wondering if her daughter was alive. Andrew's voice was rough with emotion. Mom never stopped looking, even now. She has investigators working the case. As Emily grew up, she began asking questions about her origins. I told her what I could without revealing the truth, that she was adopted, that I'd found her when she was very young. She wore that pendant every day, and every time I saw it, I was reminded of the life I'd stolen from her. The recording shifted, Norah's voice becoming urgent. But Charles can never know she survived. He spent 24 years building his position in the Kingsley Empire, positioning himself as Margaret's heir apparent. If he discovers Emily is alive, that she could expose him and claim her rightful inheritance. I've seen what he's capable of. He won't hesitate to finish what he started. The recorder clicked off, leaving them in heavy silence. Harper stared at the device, processing the weight of what she'd just learned. Not only was she Emily Kingsley, but her very existence was a threat to a man who'd already proven willing to murder children. God, she whispered. All these years, I thought I was an orphan, but I had a family who loved me, who was looking for me. You had a family who raised you too, Andrew said gently. Norah may have made a terrible decision, but she saved your life. She loved you. Harper looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since learning the truth. The shape of his eyes was identical to hers. His hands had the same long fingers. Even the way he tilted his head when he was thinking was like looking in a mirror. You're my brother, she said wonderingly. My twin brother. Yeah. Andrew's smile was sad and relieved all at once. I am. And we... Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks as she remembered the spark she'd felt when they first met. The attraction that had been building between them. Oh God, Andrew, at the restaurant, I thought. I was attracted to you. Hey. Andrew shifted closer, his voice gentle. You didn't know. We didn't know. There's no shame in that. But now we do know. And I still... She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't admit that learning the truth hadn't magically erased the way her pulse jumped when he looked at her. Andrew's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my mother. She's been calling all day. Answer it, Harper said. She deserves to know. Andrew put the phone on speaker. Margaret's voice filled the room, tight with worry. Andrew, thank God I've been trying to reach you for hours. Where are you? I'm safe, Mom, but I need to tell you something incredible. Andrew looked at Harper, who nodded encouragingly. I found her. I found Emily. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Harper wondered if the call had dropped. Andrew, Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. What are you saying? The waitress from your birthday dinner? Harper Sullivan, Mom. She's Emily. She's alive and she's here with me. A sound escaped Margaret that was part sob, part prayer. Are you certain? Andrew, Please don't give me hope if you're not absolutely certain. Harper leaned toward the phone. Mrs. Kingsley, this is Harper. I have your pendant. The one you gave to Emily the night she was taken. Oh my God. Margaret was openly crying now. Oh, my sweet girl, is it really you? I think so, Harper said, tears streaming down her own face. I'm scared and confused, and I don't know what to do, but I think I'm your daughter. Where are you? I'm coming to get you right now. Mom? Wait, Andrew interrupted. There's more, Charles. Charles was behind the kidnapping. We have proof. The line went deadly quiet. What did you say? Margaret's voice was ice. Norah Whitfield, the woman who raised Harper. She left a recording. Charles orchestrated everything. He's been lying to us for 24 years. That's impossible. Charles has been helping me search for Emily all this time. He's the one who convinced me not to give up hope, because he needed to know if you were getting close to the truth, Harper said. Understanding flooding through her. He's been monitoring your investigation to stay ahead of it. Margaret's breathing was audible over the phone. Where are you now, both of you? My loft downtown, Andrew said. Don't move, don't go anywhere, and don't trust anyone except each other. I'm coming, and I'm bringing security. If Charles really is behind this, then you're both in danger now that the truth is coming out. As if summoned by her words, Andrew's apartment lights suddenly cut out, plunging them into darkness. In the distance, the sound of the elevator humming to life echoed through the building. Andrew. Margaret's voice crackled through the phone. Andrew, what's happening? Harper grabbed Andrew's hand in the darkness, her heart hammering. Someone's coming. Andrew pulled her toward the back of the loft. Toward a fire escape he prayed would be their salvation. Mom, call the police. Tell them Charles Davenport is trying to murder his way into an inheritance. And Mom, yes, if something happens to us, make sure that recording gets to the district attorney. Charles has gotten away with this for 24 years. Don't let him get away with it for one more day. The elevator dinged softly in the hallway outside, and footsteps approached Andrew's door. Time had run out. The fire escape rattled under their weight as Andrew and Harper descended into the alley behind his building. Above them, they could hear the sound of his apartment door being forced open, furniture overturning, and harsh voices barking orders. Harper's hands shook as she gripped the metal railings. The digital recorder still clutched in her palm like a talisman. This way, Andrew whispered, leading her through a maze of dumpsters and delivery trucks toward the street. My car's in the underground garage, but we can't risk. Andrew. Harper stopped suddenly, her face pale in the orange glow of the streetlights. We have to go back to the hospital. If Charles's men were at your apartment, they might go after Norah next. Harper, it's too dangerous if they catch us. She saved my life. Harper's voice cracked with desperation. I can't let Charles hurt her because of what she told us. Andrew looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just his sister, but the woman who'd fought her way through 24 years of hardship without losing her capacity for loyalty and love. Okay, but we go in smart, and we leave the moment things go sideways. They commandeered Andrew's neighbor's motorcycle from the alley, a decision that would have horrified him under normal circumstances but seemed reasonable when weighed against their survival. Harper wrapped her arms around his waist as they sped through the late-night traffic, and despite everything, Andrew couldn't ignore the way she fit against him, the trust implicit in how she held him. She's your sister, he reminded himself fiercely. Your twin sister. But some truths, he was learning, were easier to accept intellectually than emotionally. Riverside General was quiet at 11 p.m., most of the day shift gone home, and the skeleton night crew making their rounds. They parked the motorcycle behind the building and entered through the same service entrance they'd used to escape hours earlier. Room 314, Harper whispered as they crept down the corridor. If the room's empty, but as they approached Norah's room, they could see the door was ajar and voices drifted from within. Harper peered through the crack and felt her blood freeze. Charles Davenport stood beside Norah's bed, his usually immaculate silver hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. In his hand was a pillow, and Norah lay motionless beneath the hospital blankets, her breathing so shallow it was barely perceptible. Where is she? Charles demanded, pressing the pillow closer to Norah's face. Where is Emily Kingsley? Norah's eyes fluttered open, defiant despite her weakness. Go. To hell. "You stupid woman, do you have any idea what you've cost me? 24 years of careful planning, and you couldn't just die quietly with your secrets." Harper started to push through the door, but Andrew caught her arm. "Wait," he whispered, pulling out his phone. "We need to record this. I saved that little girl," Norah gasped, "from a monster, like you. You destroyed 2 families with your misplaced heroics," Charles snarled. "Margaret has spent decades in agony. Andrew grew up traumatized and broken, and you turned a Kingsley heiress into a waitress. Some salvation. Better a living waitress than a dead heiress?" Charles raised the pillow higher. "Tell me where she is and I'll make this quick." "She's right here, you son of a bitch." Charles spun around as Harper burst into the room, Andrew close behind her with his phone recording everything. The older man's face went through a remarkable transformation. First shock, then calculation, then the cold mask of someone who'd already committed murder and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. "Emily Kingsley," he said softly, and hearing her real name from his lips made Harper's skin crawl. "You've grown into quite a beautiful young woman. You look just like your mother did at your age." "Get away from her," Harper demanded, moving to Norah's bedside. The older woman's eyes were closed, but Harper could see the slight rise and fall of her chest. "Still breathing, still fighting." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Charles said reasonably, as if they were discussing stock options instead of murder. "You see, your existence presents a rather significant problem for me." Andrew stepped forward, his phone still recording. "It's over, Charles. We know everything. The kidnapping, the murders you planned, how you've been manipulating my mother for decades." "Your mother?" Charles laughed bitterly. "Do you know what Margaret was like before you children were taken? Soft, weak. She would have run the company into the ground within a decade. I made her strong. I made her into the woman who built an empire. By murdering her daughter and traumatizing her son," Harper said. "By doing what was necessary." Charles's voice hardened. The Kingsley bloodline was weak. James was weak, content to coast on inherited wealth. Margaret was weak, more interested in charity galas than board meetings. You children would have been weak too, frittering away generations of achievement on liberal ideologies and social causes. "So you decided to steal it all for yourself," Andrew said. "I decided to preserve it," Charles corrected, "to build something that would last. And I have. The Kingsley Empire is stronger now than it's ever been, worth more than James could have ever imagined. Built on lies and murder," Harper spat. "Built on vision and determination." Charles moved closer, and Harper noticed he was positioning himself between them and the door. "Unfortunately, both of you represent a threat to that legacy now. The police are already on their way," Andrew lied smoothly. "My mother called them. They know everything." "Your mother knows what I've told her for 24 years, Charles replied. "And she trusts me implicitly. Do you really think she'll believe some wild story about her oldest friend being a child killer?" "She'll believe the recording," Harper said, holding up the digital device. "Norah told us everything." Charles's eyes fixed on the recorder with laser intensity. "Give me that." "No. Give me that. And I'll make your deaths quick. Force me to take it. And I'll make sure you suffer first." Norah's voice, weak but clear, cut through the tension. "Harper, run." Charles whirled back toward the bed, but Norah had managed to reach the nurse call button. Alarms began blaring throughout the corridor, and within seconds they could hear footsteps running toward the room. "You meddling bitch!" Charles snarled, raising the pillow again. Harper lunged forward, grabbing his arm. "Don't touch her!" Charles backhanded her across the face, sending her stumbling backward into Andrew, who caught her while keeping his phone trained on the scene. "You should have stayed dead, little girl." "Security," a voice called from the hallway. "What's the disturbance in 314? Charles looked between the twins and the approaching voices, his face a mask of cold calculation. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "I've spent too many years building this empire to let 2 children destroy it now." He moved toward the window. A 3rd-floor drop that would be dangerous but not necessarily fatal for a desperate man. "You can run, you can hide, you can even try to expose me, but I have resources you can't imagine, connections you'll never match. I will find you, and when I do, I'll finish what I started 24 years ago." "Security's here," Andrew called out, as uniformed guards filled the doorway. This man just tried to murder a patient. But Charles was already gone, disappearing through the window into the night like the predator he'd always been. Harper collapsed into the chair beside Norah's bed, taking the older woman's hand. "Norah, can you hear me?" Nora's eyes opened slowly, focusing on Harper's face with tremendous effort. "My beautiful girl, are you safe? For now," Harper whispered. "But Charles got away." "Doesn't matter," Norah breathed. "You have the truth now. You can. Go home." "You are my home," Harper said, tears streaming down her face. "You raised me, loved me, kept me safe for 24 years. You're my mother in every way that matters." Nora's smile was peaceful, content. "And Margaret is your mother too. You're so lucky to have two mothers who love you so much." Her breathing grew more labored, and Harper could see the effort it was taking for her to speak. "The pendant, it was always yours. I should have given you back sooner. You did what you thought was right," Harper said. "You saved my life. Promise me." Nora's grip tightened weakly around Harper's fingers. "Promise me you'll give your family a chance. They've been waiting for you for so long." "I promise." Nora's eyes found Andrew, who had moved to the other side of the bed. "Take care of your sister, you two. You've always been each other's guardian angels." Andrew nodded, his own eyes bright with tears. "I will, I promise." Norah Whitfield closed her eyes for the last time as the sun began to rise over Los Angeles. Her final act, one of love and protection for the girl she'd saved and raised as her own. In the growing light of dawn, Harper and Andrew sat beside the bed, holding hands across their adoptive mother's still form, no longer fighting the connection that bound them, not just as siblings, but as survivors of a tragedy that had shaped their entire lives. Outside, Charles Davenport disappeared into the city that had made him powerful, already planning his next move in a game where the stakes had just become deadly. Margaret Kingsley arrived at Riverside General Hospital as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, her heart hammering with a mixture of hope and terror that had become familiar over 24 years of false leads and broken promises. This time felt different. This time, Andrew's voice on the phone had carried a certainty that made her believe the impossible might finally be true. She swept through the hospital corridors, flanked by 2 private security guards, her normally perfect composure cracking with each step toward room 314. Outside the door, she paused, her hand trembling on the handle. Behind this door was either the answer to her prayers or another devastating disappointment. She wasn't sure her heart could survive another one. "Mrs. Kingsley," a gentle voice made her turn. Harper stood in the hallway, looking exhausted and heartbroken, her clothes wrinkled from the night's events. But it was her eyes that made Margaret's breath catch. Those unmistakable emerald eyes that mirrored Andrew's perfectly, that she'd seen every night in her dreams for over 2 decades. "Harper," Margaret whispered, and the name felt foreign on her tongue. For 24 years, she'd called her missing daughter Emily, had refused to accept that the name might be lost forever. Are you really?" Harper's own composure crumbled. "I think so. I mean, yes, the recording, the pendant, everything Norah told us. I'm Emily Kingsley. I'm your daughter." Margaret closed the distance between them in 3 quick steps, her hands reaching out to cup Harper's face. Her fingers traced the familiar bone structure, the delicate features that had haunted her memory. "You have your father's jawline," she whispered, "and my mother's nose. Oh God, you're real. You're alive." "I'm sorry," Harper said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry I couldn't remember you. Couldn't find my way back to you sooner." "Don't you dare apologize," Margaret said fiercely, pulling Harper into an embrace that was 24 years overdue. "You were 4 years old. You were stolen from us, and you survived. That's all that matters." Harper melted into her mother's arms, and for the first time since learning the truth, she felt a sense of belonging that went deeper than memory. This was her mother, not just biologically, but in some fundamental way that transcended time and separation. "Mrs. Kingsley," Andrew appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "We need to talk about Charles. He was here. He tried to kill Norah, and he threatened us both." Margaret's arms tightened protectively around Harper. "Where is he now?" "Gone. He escaped through the window when hospital security arrived. Andrew held up his phone. But I got it all on video. His confession, his threats, everything. Margaret's face hardened into the expression that had made her one of the most feared negotiators in Los Angeles business circles. Show me. They moved to a quiet waiting area, where Andrew played the recording of Charles's confrontation with Norah, followed by the video he'd captured of Charles's confession and threats. Margaret watched in silence, her expression growing colder with each revelation. 24 years, she said when the videos ended. 24 years I've trusted that man with my business. My grief, my hope. He's been in my home, at my table, advising me on every major decision. Mom, Andrew said gently, there's more Norah. She didn't make it. She died about an hour ago. Harper's composure shattered again. She saved my life twice. Once when I was 4, and again last night by giving us the truth, and I couldn't save her. Margaret took Harper's hands in both of hers. She did save you. She gave you 24 years of life and love that Charles tried to steal. That's not a failure. That's a miracle. But now she's gone. And Charles is still out there, and I don't even know who I'm supposed to be anymore, Harper said, her voice breaking. Am I Harper Sullivan, the waitress who raises her adopted daughter and works 2 jobs to make ends meet? Or am I Emily Kingsley, the heiress to a hotel empire? Because I've never felt less like either one. You're both, Margaret said simply. You're my daughter who survived something terrible and built a life of strength and compassion. The circumstances don't change who you are. They just explain how you became the remarkable woman standing in front of me. Andrew sat down beside them. We need to decide what to do about Charles. He's not going to just disappear and let us live happily ever after. He spent too much time building his position to give up now. We go to the police, Margaret said immediately. We have evidence. We have testimony. We have the word of a woman who's now dead, and 2 people who could be seen as having everything to gain by framing Charles. Andrew interrupted. He's been the family's trusted advisor for decades. His reputation is impeccable. It's going to be his word against ours. Margaret pulled out her phone. Then we make sure it's more than just our word. She scrolled through her contacts. I'm calling Detective Sarah Chen. She's been on Emily's case since the beginning. If anyone will listen to us, it's her. While Margaret made the call, Harper and Andrew sat in uncomfortable silence. The adrenaline of the night's events was wearing off, leaving them exhausted and overwhelmed by the magnitude of their situation. This is so surreal, Harper said quietly. Yesterday morning, I was Harper Sullivan, worried about paying rent and whether Chloe needs new school clothes. Now I'm Emily Kingsley, and I have a family I don't remember, and a fortune I never wanted. Money doesn't change who you are, Andrew said. Trust me, I've had it my whole life, and I've never felt more lost than I do right now. Harper looked at him, really looked at him, and saw her own confusion reflected in his eyes. What happens now between us? I mean, we're siblings, but we don't have any of the shared history that usually goes with that. We don't have childhood memories or inside jokes or even the comfortable familiarity of people who've grown up together. I guess we figure it out as we go, Andrew said. We learn to be brother and sister. And the other thing, Harper asked quietly, the fact that I was attracted to you before I knew the truth. Andrew's jaw tightened. That was before we knew. It doesn't mean anything now, doesn't it? Harper's voice was barely a whisper. Because knowing we're siblings hasn't made you feel less familiar to me. If anything, it explains why being near you felt like coming home. Harper, I'm not saying I want to pursue anything inappropriate, she said quickly. I'm just trying to understand what I'm feeling, because when you look at me, I see recognition in your eyes too. Not romantic recognition, but something deeper, like you've been waiting for me your whole life. I have been, Andrew admitted. I've had dreams about a sister I couldn't quite remember, a presence that should have been beside me but wasn't. Meeting you, it was like finding a piece of myself I didn't even know was missing. Margaret returned, her expression grim. Detective Chen is on her way. She wants to see all the evidence we have, and she's putting a protection detail on both of you until Charles is apprehended. Is she taking this seriously? Andrew asked. She said there have been rumors about Charles for years. Nothing concrete enough to investigate, but enough to make her take a closer look when credible evidence surfaces. Margaret sat down between her children. She also said something interesting. The original investigation into the kidnapping was closed very quickly, allegedly due to lack of evidence. But some of the detectives working the case thought it was shut down prematurely. Charles's influence, Harper said. Probably. But now we have a chance to get justice. Not just for what he did to us, but for Norah too. Margaret's voice hardened. He murdered a woman in a hospital bed. That's not something money and connections can easily make disappear. Harper leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by the rapid changes in her life. I need to go home. I need to check on Chloe, explain what's happening. She's probably worried sick. Chloe, Margaret asked. My adopted daughter, she's 6. I've been raising her since she was 2. Harper's voice softened with love. She's the most important thing in my life. Margaret's expression grew complex. You have a daughter. Is that a problem? Harper asked, suddenly defensive. No, it's wonderful, Margaret said quickly. It's just, I missed so much of your life, your first steps, your first words, high school graduation. And now you have a child of your own. I've missed watching you become a mother. You didn't miss it by choice, Harper said gently. And we have time now. We have the rest of our lives to be a family. If Charles doesn't kill us first, Andrew added grimly. He won't, Margaret said with steel in her voice. I've spent 24 years believing I failed to protect my children. I won't fail again. As they sat together in the hospital waiting room, surrounded by the antiseptic smell and fluorescent lighting that had witnessed so much tragedy, the 3 members of the Kingsley family began the delicate process of learning to be a family again. Outside, Los Angeles was waking up to a new day, unaware that one of its most respected businessmen was a killer, and that the city's most famous cold case was about to be blown wide open. And somewhere in the maze of the city, Charles Davenport was making plans to ensure that the truth would die with the people who knew it. The Kingsley mansion in Malibu looked exactly as it had 24 years ago, its Spanish colonial architecture gleaming white against the Pacific coastline. Harper sat in the back of Margaret's Bentley as they approached the estate, her heart hammering with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This was the house where she'd been born Emily Kingsley, where she'd played with Andrew in the foyer, where her life had been torn apart in one terrible night. Are you okay? Andrew asked from beside her, noting how her hands trembled in her lap. I don't know, Harper admitted. Part of me thinks I should remember something, but it all looks like a beautiful stranger's house. Margaret turned from the front passenger seat. We don't have to do this today. We can go to a hotel, somewhere neutral. No, Harper said firmly. If I'm going to reclaim my life as Emily Kingsley, I need to face this. Besides, Chloe should see where her new family lives. 6-year-old Chloe pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide with wonder. Harper, is this really where you grew up? It's like a castle. It is like a castle, isn't it? Harper said, managing a smile for the little girl who'd been her anchor through so many storms. And now it's your castle too. Detective Sarah Chen's unmarked police car was already in the circular driveway. Along with 2 other official vehicles, the investigation into Charles Davenport was moving quickly, but Harper knew they were racing against time. A man who'd successfully covered up child murder for 24 years wouldn't hesitate to eliminate witnesses. Inside the mansion, the foyer took Harper's breath away. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating marble floors where twin children had once played with wooden blocks. For a moment, she could almost hear echoes of childish laughter, could almost see shadows of the little girl she'd been. Emily used to build towers right there, Andrew said quietly, following her gaze. She'd stack them as high as she could reach, then dare me to knock them down. Did you? Harper asked. Every time? She'd pretend to be mad, but she loved it. She'd giggle and start building again immediately. Detective Chen approached them, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Ms. Sullivan. I'm sorry, Ms. Kingsley. I know this must be overwhelming. It is, Harper admitted, but I want Charles caught, for what he did to my family, and for what he did to Norah. We're doing everything we can. I've reviewed the evidence you provided, and combined with some irregularities we're finding in the original investigation, we have enough to bring him in for questioning. The problem is finding him. Margaret's face hardened. What do you mean? Charles Davenport seems to have vanished. His house is empty. His office cleared out, and he's not responding to any attempts at contact. We have APBs out, but so far nothing. He's running, Andrew said. He knows the game is up. Maybe, Detective Chen said. Or maybe he's planning something else. Men like Charles don't usually run. They fight, and they fight dirty. As if summoned by her words, the mansion's security system chimed with an incoming call. Margaret moved to the intercom panel, frowning at the unfamiliar number on the display. "Don't answer it," Detective Chen warned. But Margaret had already pressed the button. Charles Davenport's voice filled the foyer, smooth and controlled despite everything that had happened. "Hello, Margaret. I hope you're having a pleasant family reunion." "Charles?" Margaret's voice was ice. "Where are you? Close enough to see what a touching scene this is. The prodigal daughter returns. The family reunites. Justice triumphs over evil. It's very heartwarming." Harper moved closer to the intercom, her voice steady despite her fear. "It's over, Charles. The police know everything." "Do they?" Charles's laugh was cold. "They know what a dead woman told you, and what two traumatized individuals claim to remember. That's hardly conclusive evidence." "We have your confession on video," Andrew said. "A recording obtained through illegal entry, and without my consent. Inadmissible in court, I'm afraid." Detective Chen stepped forward. "Mr. Davenport, this is Detective Sarah Chen. LAPD, you need to come in for questioning. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "Detective Chen, yes, I remember you. You were so eager to solve the Kingsley case 24 years ago. Too eager, some might say. Too willing to follow leads that might have proved embarrassing for certain people." The detective's face darkened. "What are you implying?" "I'm implying that some cases are closed for reasons that have nothing to do with lack of evidence, and some people might find it very inconvenient if certain facts came to light." Margaret moved closer to the intercom. "Charles, whatever game you're playing, whatever leverage you think you have, it's finished. I know what you did. I know you murdered my daughter. Attempted to murder," Charles corrected. "I seem to have failed rather spectacularly at that, but failure can be corrected." "Margaret, mistakes can be fixed." The line went dead, and the foyer fell into tense silence. "He's threatening us," Harper said unnecessarily. "He's desperate," Detective Chen replied. "Desperate men make mistakes. We'll catch him." But before she could say more, Margaret's cell phone rang. This time, the caller ID showed Charles's name. "Put it on speaker," Detective Chen instructed. "Margaret, I'm going to make this very simple." Charles's voice was calm, reasonable. "You're going to call off the police. Destroy any evidence you think you have, and we're going to return to the way things were. In exchange, I'll let you keep your reunited family. And if I refuse," Margaret asked, "then you'll lose them again, permanently this time." "You can't threaten us," Andrew said. "We're surrounded by police protection." "Are you? How many officers are in that house with you right now, Detective Chen and perhaps 2 others? And how many exits does the Kingsley mansion have? I know that house as well as you do. Andrew, I helped design the security system. Remember," as if to emphasize his point. The mansion's lights flickered and then went out, plunging them into darkness. Despite the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, the backup generator should have kicked in immediately, but the house remained dark. "He's cut the power," Detective Chen said, already radioing for backup. "The security system runs on the same grid," Margaret said, her voice tight with fear. "Without power, the cameras are down. The motion sensors are offline." Harper grabbed Chloe, pulling the frightened little girl close. "It's okay, baby. We're going to play a game, okay? We're going to be very quiet and very still." "I'm scared," Chloe whispered. "I know, sweetheart, but Harper's going to keep you safe," Margaret said, and Harper felt a surge of gratitude for how naturally her birth mother had accepted Chloe as part of the family. Detective Chen was coordinating with her backup units through her radio. "Ida on additional units." 7 minutes, came the crackling response. "We don't have 7 minutes," Andrew said grimly, moving to the window. "There's movement in the garden. Multiple figures." Charles's voice came through Margaret's phone again, now with an edge of cold satisfaction. "You have 60 seconds to send the police away and agree to my terms. If you don't, I'll demonstrate just how serious I am about protecting my interests. Charles, please, Margaret said. These are innocent people. Chloe is just a child. So were Emily and Andrew when I tried to kill them the first time. Age has never been a barrier to necessary action. Harper felt something snap inside her. This man had stolen her childhood, murdered her adoptive mother, and was now threatening the little girl she loved more than life itself. No, she said, taking the phone from Margaret. No more. I'm Emily Kingsley, daughter of James and Margaret, heiress to the Kingsley fortune. And I'm not hiding anymore. Emily. Charles's voice held a note of genuine admiration. There's the Kingsley fire, I remember. Too bad it won't save you. Maybe not, Harper replied. But it's going to expose you. Whatever happens here today. The truth is already out. Detective Chen has copies of everything. The district attorney has copies. If you kill us, you'll only be proving your guilt. Perhaps, but I'll be proving it from a country without extradition treaties, with more money than I can spend in a lifetime. Sometimes, Emily, winning isn't about being right. It's about being the last one standing. The phone went dead, just as the sound of breaking glass echoed from the mansion's east wing. Charles Davenport had come home to finish what he'd started 24 years ago. Everyone stay low, Detective Chen ordered, drawing her weapon. Move toward the kitchen. There's a panic room off the pantry. As they crept through the darkened hallways of Harper's childhood home, she couldn't help but think how history was repeating itself. Once again, she was a frightened child hiding in this house while a monster hunted her family. But this time, she wasn't 4 years old and helpless. This time, she was going to fight back. The panic room off the kitchen pantry was a steel-reinforced vault that James Kingsley had installed after the original kidnapping, a father's desperate attempt to protect what remained of his family. Margaret's hands shook as she entered the security code, muscle memory guiding her through numbers she'd hoped never to use. Inside everyone, Detective Chen ordered, but Harper hesitated at the threshold. If we lock ourselves in there, we're trapped, she said. Charles knows this house. He probably knows about the panic room too. She's right, Andrew said grimly. He helped Dad design the updated security system after everything happened. He insisted on knowing every detail, said it was for our protection. Detective Chen spoke rapidly into her radio. All units, suspects are inside the residence. We need SWAT and tactical units immediately. Static crackled back. But the response was garbled. Damn it, he's jamming our communications too. Margaret pulled Chloe closer, the little girl's eyes wide with fear in the emergency lighting that had finally kicked in. It's going to be okay, sweetheart. We just need to stay quiet and wait for help. But what if the bad man finds us? Chloe whispered. Then Harper and I will protect you, Andrew said, his voice gentle but determined. That's what families do. A crash echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps on marble floors. Charles wasn't bothering with stealth anymore. He was making his presence known, using fear as a weapon. Margaret. His voice boomed through the mansion's intercom system, which he'd apparently managed to reactivate. I know you can hear me. This is your last chance to be reasonable. Harper moved to the panic room's monitor, which showed feeds from the mansion's internal cameras. Most were dark, but a few still functioned on battery power. On one screen, she could see Charles walking through the foyer where she'd played as a child, flanked by 2 men in tactical gear. He brought backup, she said quietly. Professional killers, Detective Chen observed, studying the men's movements. Military training, probably mercenaries. Andrew joined Harper at the monitor. Mom, where does that service tunnel lead? The one Dad showed me when I was 12. Margaret's eyes lit up with understanding. It connects to the beach house. James built it after the kidnapping in case we ever needed an escape route. I can get Chloe and Mom out through there, Harper said. You and Detective Chen can hold them off until backup arrives. Absolutely not, Andrew said immediately. We're not splitting up. We stay together. Andrew's right, Margaret said. We're a family now. We face this together. Charles's voice came through the intercom again. Closer now. I know you're in the kitchen wing. The thermal imaging is quite impressive these days. I can see your heat signatures huddled together like frightened rabbits. Detective Chen cursed under her breath. Military-grade equipment. This isn't some desperate last stand. He's been planning this. On the monitor, they watched Charles approach the kitchen, his movements confident and unhurried. He paused at the pantry door, looking directly into the camera with a cold smile. 24 years ago, I made a mistake, he said, speaking to the camera as if addressing them personally. I trusted others to handle a delicate situation. I should have done it myself then, but I was squeamish about getting my hands dirty. Age has cured me of such weaknesses. He gestured to one of his men, who produced what looked like a small explosive device. Oh God, Margaret breathed. He's going to blow the door. The panic room can withstand a lot, Andrew said, but his voice lacked confidence. Not military-grade explosives, Detective Chen replied grimly. We need another option. Harper studied the monitor, her mind racing. The wine cellar, she said suddenly. There's an entrance to the service tunnel from the wine cellar, isn't there, Mom? Yes, but we'd have to cross the main hallway to get there. They'd see us. Not if we create a distraction. Harper looked at Detective Chen. How many rounds do you have? 2 clips, plus my backup weapon, and the tactical guys with Charles. Professional-grade weapons, probably automatic. We'd be outgunned. Harper's fingers found her pendant. The broken heart that had been her only connection to this family for 24 years. An idea began forming. Desperate, but possible. Charles wants me, she said quietly. This whole thing started because I survived when I should have died. If I surrender myself. No, Andrew said immediately. Absolutely not. Hear me out. If I go to him, it buys you time to get Chloe and Mom to safety. Once they're secure, you can come back for me. Harper, you don't understand what you're suggesting, Margaret said. Charles isn't going to just kill you quickly. He's been humiliated, exposed. He'll want you to suffer first. Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance. Harper turned to Detective Chen. How long until your backup arrives? Should be any minute now. But with the communications jammed, an explosion rocked the mansion, and through the monitor they could see smoke beginning to fill the kitchen. Charles wasn't bothering with the panic room door. He was using the explosives to flush them out. That's our cue, Harper said, moving toward the tunnel entrance. Everyone into the passage. Now. But as they reached the tunnel door, the lights went out completely. Emergency power had finally failed, plunging them into absolute darkness. In the distance, they could hear Charles's men moving through the house with military precision. I can't see anything, Chloe whimpered. It's okay, baby, Harper whispered, lifting the little girl into her arms. We're going to feel our way along the wall, just like a game. The service tunnel was narrow and pitch black, forcing them to move single file with their hands on each other's shoulders. Margaret led, her knowledge of the passage their only guide, while Detective Chen brought up the rear with her weapon drawn. 70 feet to the beach house, Margaret whispered. Almost there. But as they emerged into the basement of the beach house, they found Charles waiting for them, his silhouette framed against the moonlight streaming through the windows. Hello, Emily, he said conversationally. Did you really think I wouldn't know about James's little escape route? I helped him plan it. Remember, Detective Chen raised her weapon, but one of Charles's men was already behind her, pressing a gun to her neck. Drop it, he ordered. The detective hesitated, then carefully placed her weapon on the floor. Excellent, Charles said. Now we can have a proper family reunion. Harper set Chloe down gently, positioning herself between the little girl and Charles. Let them go. Your fight is with me. My fight is with the entire Kingsley bloodline, Charles corrected. You, Andrew. Even little Chloe there. She's part of the family now, isn't she? Margaret's new granddaughter. She's just a child, Margaret said desperately. She has nothing to do with this. Neither did you and Andrew 24 years ago, but that didn't stop me then. Charles moved closer, and Harper could see the madness lurking in his eyes. Do you want to know the truth, Emily? The real truth about why I had you kidnapped? We know why, Andrew said. You wanted to inherit the business. Charles laughed. That was part of it, certainly. But the real reason was much more personal. He looked directly at Margaret. Your mother and I were lovers, Emily. Had been for months before you were taken. Margaret's face went white. That's a lie. Is it? Think back, Margaret. All those late business dinners, all those trips where James was conveniently absent. You were lonely, vulnerable after James's affairs, and I was there to comfort you." "You're lying," Margaret repeated, but her voice lacked conviction. "I proposed to you, Margaret, the night before the kidnapping. I asked you to leave James and marry me. Do you remember what you said?" Harper watched her mother's face crumble as the memory returned. "You said you could never leave your children," Charles continued, "that they were your first priority, always. So I decided to remove that obstacle." The truth hit Harper like a physical blow. "You didn't just want to inherit the business. You wanted my mother." "I wanted everything," Charles said simply. "The woman, the money, the power. I still do." In the distance, the sound of sirens finally broke through the night. Police backup was arriving, but they were still minutes away from finding the beach house. "Time's up," Charles said, raising his weapon. "Goodbye, Emily. This time, I'll make sure there are no survivors." But as he spoke, Andrew moved. 24 years of guilt and rage propelled him forward as he threw himself between Charles and his sister, the brother's instinct to protect finally stronger than his fear. The gunshot echoed across the beach like thunder, and everything changed forever. 6 months later, the afternoon sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Kingsley mansion's dining room, casting golden patterns across the mahogany table where 3 generations of family gathered for Sunday dinner. Harper, she'd legally reclaimed the name Emily but kept Harper for daily use, watched 6-year-old Chloe carefully arrange her napkin, mimicking Margaret's elegant mannerisms with the serious concentration only children possess. "Grandma Margaret, will you tell me the story about when Mommy Harper was little again?" Chloe asked, her eyes bright with the security that came from belonging somewhere. Margaret smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze the little girl's hand. "Which story, sweetheart?" "About when she and Uncle Andrew used to build block towers in the foyer." "The one about the pendant," Chloe said, touching the small silver locket around her own neck, a replica Margaret had commissioned so Chloe could feel truly part of the family tradition. Harper's fingers automatically went to her throat, where the original Kingsley pendant rested against her skin. 6 months of therapy had helped her recover fragments of memories from before the kidnapping, but it was the new memories being made that mattered most. "Well," Margaret began, settling into her storytelling voice. "A long time ago, there was a little girl named Emily who loved her twin brother Andrew more than anything in the world." As Margaret spoke, Harper caught Andrew's eye across the table. He looked different now, relaxed in a way she'd never seen before. The scar on his shoulder, where Charles's bullet had torn through muscle and bone, had healed completely, but it had taken months for the emotional wounds to close. The trial had been a media sensation. Charles Davenport, respected businessman and pillar of Los Angeles society, revealed as a kidnapper and murderer who'd spent decades manipulating a grieving family. The evidence had been overwhelming. Norah's recording, Andrew's video, Detective Chen's testimony about the corrupted original investigation, and finally Charles's own confession in the beach house before he'd tried to kill them all. Charles himself had survived the police shootout that followed, though his mercenaries hadn't been so fortunate. He was currently serving 3 consecutive life sentences in a maximum security prison. His carefully constructed empire dissolved, and his assets seized to pay restitution to his victims. "And they all lived happily ever after," Margaret finished, but Chloe frowned. "But Grandma, that's not the end of the story. What happened to the bad man?" "The bad man went to prison forever and ever," Harper said gently, "and he can never hurt anyone again." "Good," Chloe said with 6-year-old finality. "Bad people should go to prison." After dinner, while Chloe played in the garden under the watchful eye of the security team that still accompanied them everywhere, Harper and Andrew walked along the beach that bordered the family property. The Pacific stretched endlessly before them, its rhythmic waves washing away the footprints they left in the sand. "I've been thinking about what Dr. Patterson said in our session last week," Andrew said, referring to the family therapist who'd been helping them navigate their unusual situation. "About what, specifically?" Harper asked, though she suspected she knew. "About the fact that we're still struggling with boundaries, about how being twins who were separated as children creates a unique kind of attachment that doesn't fit normal sibling relationships." Harper stopped walking, turning to face him. "Andrew, what are you trying to say?" "I'm saying that maybe it's okay that what I feel for you isn't exactly brotherly love. And maybe it's okay that what you feel for me isn't exactly sisterly." Harper's heart clenched. This conversation had been building for months, dancing around the edges of every interaction they'd had since learning the truth. Dr. Patterson also said that those feelings are normal for people in our situation, but that doesn't mean we should act on them. "I know," Andrew said quickly. "I'm not suggesting we cross any lines. I'm just saying maybe we can stop feeling guilty about the fact that our connection is deeper and more complicated than typical siblings." Harper looked out at the ocean, remembering the night in the hospital, when she'd first realized she was attracted to the man who turned out to be her twin brother. The shame had been overwhelming, but therapy had helped her understand that trauma and separation created bonds that didn't follow conventional rules. "We're never going to be normal siblings," she said finally. "We didn't grow up together. We don't have shared childhood experiences beyond trauma. And we met as adults who were attracted to each other. But we can be something else," Andrew said. "We can be what we are. Twins who found each other again, who complete each other in ways that maybe don't have a name." Harper smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Family doesn't always fit into neat categories, does it?" "No, it doesn't. Look at us. Look at what we've built. You, me, Mom, Chloe. We're not a conventional family by any stretch of the imagination." They walked back toward the house, where Margaret was visible through the windows, helping Chloe with what looked like homework. At 66, Margaret had thrown herself into grandmotherhood with the same intensity she'd once devoted to business, making up for lost time with both her daughter and her new granddaughter. "I have news," Harper said as they reached the patio. "The Golden Pearl offered me a management position, full benefits, good salary, and I'd be overseeing the staff training program." Andrew stopped. "You're going back to work, Harper. You don't need to work. The trust fund Dad set up for Emily has been accumulating interest for 24 years. You're independently wealthy. I know, but I need to do something meaningful with my life. I can't just be the lost heiress who was found. I want to use my experience to help other people in the service industry, to create better working conditions and opportunities." Andrew's smile was proud and admiring. "That's very you, taking your experience and using it to help others. Besides," Harper added with a grin, "someone needs to keep an eye on the family business interests. Margaret's been talking about expanding into hospitality training programs. A Kingsley family venture in workforce development," Andrew mused. "I like it." That evening, as they gathered in the living room for their traditional Sunday night movie, Harper reflected on how far they'd all come. Chloe curled up between Harper and Margaret on the sofa, chattering about her upcoming school play. Andrew sat in the chair opposite them, reading over business proposals, but glancing up frequently to join the conversation. This wasn't the family any of them had expected to have. Harper had grown up believing she was an orphan. Margaret had spent 24 years grieving a daughter she thought was dead. Andrew had lived with survivor's guilt and the inexplicable feeling that part of himself was missing, and Chloe had started life without any family at all. But sometimes the most beautiful things came from broken pieces being carefully put back together. "Harper," Chloe's sleepy voice interrupted her thoughts. "When I grow up, will I get to run the hotel business too?" Harper looked around the room at her family, chosen and found and fought for, and felt her heart fill with a contentment she'd never imagined possible. "If you want to, sweetheart, but whatever you choose to do, you'll always have us supporting you." "Good," Chloe mumbled, already half asleep. "I like having a family." As Margaret carried the sleeping child upstairs, and Andrew began turning off lights, Harper remained on the sofa for a moment, touching the pendant that had brought her home. The broken heart was still broken. That would never change. But she'd learned that broken things could still be beautiful, could still be whole in ways that mattered. Outside, the Pacific waves continued their eternal rhythm, and somewhere in the distance, the lights of Los Angeles twinkled like earthbound stars. The city that had taken her family had also given them back to each other, and tomorrow would bring new opportunities to build the life they'd all been meant to have. The Kingsley family was finally complete.